So if I'm looking at people's energy fields and how they're relating, let's say I'm painting and I have, red over here and blue over here, and they're next to each other. And then what Kaylan does is she's blue and she jumps over into red and she wants to make purple. Right. And now she's feeling everything because now you're purple and now she's completely disoriented. Because she actually thinks is she red or is she purple? Yeah. She's not blue anymore. Mm-hmm. And so of course you've created a situation where there is no boundary inherently to have that relationship. Like the way the relationship was formed was we didn't come together as two colors next to each other holding hands. We came together making purple. Yeah. So there's something to like how we initially connect in. And this is where, with you, I was like, noticing where immediately you can creep in and you merge, and now there's no way to create a boundary, which isn't true, but you know what I'm saying, like that's how it feels. And also everything that's theirs you feel as yours.
How does it feel to be back in San Diego?
I did a Q&A that's coming out this week and I talked about it. It feels great. I feel like I'm at home.
It feels really good to have you here, I must say.
Did it feel different?
Yes, it feels different.
It feels correct.
After 7/7, it feels so different.
What happened at 7/7?
Your birthday.
I know, but tell us what happened.
Well, you and I have a chord now where every time I think about you, I just cry.
Oh, yeah.
No, but that was what I feel like you landed that day. Like you landed and it was like, it feels like when you plant a propagated plant, it's like it had roots already, but then it's like you put it in the soil. And things that are like related to that in my life, but also not related, you know, like it just felt like a really magical portal day that opened. And for us to be together, like on that day with you was really special, and to celebrate and just like welcoming in a new chapter of like, what do we actually want and what are we actually going for? Let's fucking go. Let's hit the ground running,
Yeah, definitely. A lot happened that day. I think this is the first time I have moved somewhere and I really felt like I just slid into that house and I was like, I feel like I'm at home, so it felt very right. And I think because I've been traveling so much between Arizona and San Diego, finally landing was like, okay, thank God. So yeah, no, I feel amazing. And it feels like a very different San Diego. Like everything felt broken into a million pieces almost when I left. I was like, I need to get out of here. And I think so much has changed since I've been gone. And I was talking to Kaylee about this because it's funny how she had lived in a certain area in San Diego and then had to veer off into another area and ended up like after relationship changes moving back to the same apartment building.
Wow.
Like the same exact one. And so we, at the time, were like kind of laughing about how it's crazy you can move back to literally the exact same place and feel so different. And it's similar for me with this, like, because my home now is so close to my old home before. And at first I was resistant to that, but it feels so different. And I think it's been interesting for me to watch just like the chords, the energy chords. And I felt like people could really feel me come back. Yeah. There were people who, look, let's just be honest. Like there were people who have not like contacted me in a long time, and it was like everybody watched my stories the day I moved back, which was really bizarre. And I'm like, wow, it was like you could feel me coming in. So yeah, but it's different. I mean, social relationships are different, career is different. I'm like at a vastly different place, and I think that Arizona was perfect to figure my stuff out, so to speak. Yeah.
So how are you going to be moving differently now that you're back? What do you think is like the name of your game? Like what's the biggest difference of how you're interacting that's different?
I mean, I think that the boundaries are big. I feel like for the first time in a long time, I'm like really ready to sit down and like grind. And I think I have a lot of things I want to work on that are actually my highest priority. And so it makes it clear what's not a priority.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like you have clarity now.
Yeah, in my priorities. And I think before I was just kind of like letting the universe take me where it needed to take me. And now it feels very clear, like this is what I want to focus on. This is what I want to create. I have the energy for it. I have the excitement for it. I had the motivation for it. And before, I didn't really feel that, you know, so it's like we've been talking a lot in the membership in the community about like that vibrational anchor point that's like pulling you forward. It's like actually moving you because you want to move forward toward it. You can feel it moving you. And I don't think I had that before. But I think, you know, a lot of, I told you this, like I had gotten in some bad patterns when I moved to San Diego because I was letting myself calibrate to certain people that I was, you know, have gotten close to and people I love. And I had calibrated to them to make it like easier socially. And I think because for a long time I was so career oriented, there was a period when I had lived here last time where I thought like I should be a lot more social. I was like shoulding all over myself. I should prioritize this. I never had that period in my life. And what I thought was putting me into balance was putting me like really far out of balance. And a lot of the habits that I picked up because I was calibrating to how other entrepreneurs around me were doing things really fucked me up, like really fucked me over and got me just really out of balance. And I had a lot of leaky boundaries because of it. And so going to Arizona and then just having a blank space to like feel my own energy. I mean, a lot happened there. Coming back, I'm like, I'm sliding back into like my OG patterns that have always served me well. And that feels very empowering. And I can feel, I mean, there's been a lot of pushback from people around me. And it's been interesting to watch as this is all, a lot of it's nonverbal. I mean, there's been some verbal stuff, but most of it's been nonverbal about me like pulling my energy back and just really focusing on projects career-wise, for example. And I can feel people and I'm watching their behaviors as they're trying to tug on me again. And so it's just funny how you can see those chords. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's kind of like the boundaries and the clarity and the precision and tightening the circle and thinking bigger. And I think kind of forcing people to either like, you either can rise up and like move forward with me or like you're not coming with me. And I think people are like feeling that strongly. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, let's get into it. What do we do? What do the people need to know about boundaries, Christina?
My God. I don't know. I mean, where do you want to start?
No, I think that's a good place to start about like calibrating to other people. Because I think that that's a missing piece for me that I didn't understand for a lot of years as far as like, I'm calibrating to them. And that's why I'm telling myself like, oh, I don't need boundaries because like we're on the same level, same frequency. And it's like trying to like just become this vibrational mishmash, as you say, instead of being like, I'm the one holding the frequency. This is where I'm going. And like you just said, like you're either rising with me or you're not in alignment anymore. And so navigating that, I guess, starts with becoming clear on yourself.
I mean, I just think that people don't have a baseline. Like people, most people don't have an example of like what healthy boundaries are. And I think a lot of that I've learned through business coaches, to be honest. Like, and I had some of my toughest lessons. I mean, there were so many conversations where I had boundaries set upon me and I cried, like, you know, because it can trigger a lot of stuff. And that really changed the way I viewed the whole world. But I think just like thinking about how we grew up, and I definitely grew up in a situation where, I mean, it's a nuanced conversation. Like I can think of places where there definitely were like healthy boundaries that I saw, but a lot of it was no boundaries. And if I tried to set a boundary, I got in trouble.
Same.
Right. And so, and then I think especially moving to SoCal, that was, you know, that was really interesting for me going from NorCal to LA and then from LA to San Diego. I noticed like a distinct difference in how boundaried people were. And living in a place like LA, I know people have a lot to say about LA, but it's all about who you hang out with. There's so many different, I mean, anywhere you live, right? There's different types of people. And in LA, I was around a lot of really great people who were creating amazing things in their life and in their careers and had big visions and were very boundaried. And so I feel really lucky that I had kind of gotten in with that group of entrepreneurs. I had a lot of different examples, mentors, friends, people in my industry who had really good boundaries. And so I learned, and I'm just fortunate that I kind of fell into that. I think I manifested that. People who were good examples. So I thought, oh, this is how you do it, you know, because I was young and I was like, you know, how do you do this thing? And I watched these people who are successful. I'm like, oh, you you say no a lot. Oh, you only say yes to things that are worth your time. Oh, you're really clear on your priorities. So I had those examples. And moving to San Diego, it was one of the first things I really, really noticed. I was like, people here are so loosey-goosey. It's like how I thought about it, you know, like they're so loosey-goosey. Mm-hmm. And then I think there's that, you know, that talk about like, you know, being too uptight or being too scheduled, or, and then you like shit all over yourself. And with things with like my health issues, they're like, you know, don't be so scheduled, mm-hmm. just relax, let yourself go with the flow. And I've shared this in different ways, like with different parts of my life. Well, the more I like went with the flow, the worse I felt. And I told you this, you know, like I've been on all sides of the spectrum and like really have given all that a shot. And I just felt worse and worse. And the more I did that, like the harder business became. Mm-hmm. And it's like a big energy down here. And you look at, I mean, for me, I just think in terms of a lot of the entrepreneurship circles I've seen, and this is just bias based on my like selection bias, my experiences, a lot, and not everybody, I do know a lot of entrepreneurs down here that like, or, you know, get it done, and have created big things. But at large, I think a lot of the community down here in entrepreneurship is a lot more like loosey-goosey. Mm-hmm. And that's why they don't create things that are as big as like, mm-hmm. you know, you see people in LA who it's a lot more like businessy feeling. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of friends who have moved from San Diego to LA for that reason. Mm-hmm. And it totally changed their career. So, I mean, I'm talking about career because it's obviously intimately tied for me. And I think, I mean, that's really important to me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think a lot of people just don't have examples. Mm-hmm. And then when they meet examples, they don't realize that's what's going on, and they create a lot of judgment. Like that person's mean, that person's mm-hmm. a bitch, that person is too uptight, you know, like mm-hmm. they make it about them. And I've definitely had that issue with, you know, friendships. Mm-hmm. We've talked about a lot of different dynamics where, you know, what's being a good friend? Is being a good friend like making myself available to somebody whenever they need me? I don't think so. Yeah. And that's my definition. Mm-hmm. Like if that's what, and I've had that conversation with people, like if that's what you need from a friend, I totally honor and respect that. Like that's not what I don't do mm-hmm. that. And the same way, like I don't expect all of my friends to be available anytime I need them. Mm-hmm. You know, like there's so many times I might reach out to somebody and they just don't reply, or they're like, I don't have space. And that's totally fine. Mm-hmm. It's totally fine. Like I don't take it personally. Mm-hmm. But I think that a lot of people don't have examples of that, mm-hmm. you know?
Yeah. Lots of codependency. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Lots of codependency.
I mean, I don't remember if I've told this story on the podcast, but I've definitely told it in like different coaching containers. I remember there was this, it was like early on in my experience with different business coaches. And I left this voice message. Have I told you this? Mm-hmm. I left this voice message that was like 6 minutes long, mm-hmm. and it was just me like talking about all kinds of stuff. And she replied and she goes, I'm not listening to this message. It's just word vomit. I need you to restate this in under 60 seconds and get to the point. And I remember I stopped. I was on a walk and I sat down and I started crying. Mm-hmm. And I felt this like mother wound thing come up hardcore. And I was so hurt. And then I thought about it and I was like, you know, I went through my feelings. I'm like, she's right. She's right. You know, and it's one of the things I know you've seen me talk to people about, like, what's the point? Like, get to the point. And that same mentor always says, she's like, I can tell exactly mm-hmm. how much money you make based mm-hmm. on how succinctly you can ask a question mm-hmm. or make a point. And I 100% agree. And I've seen that again and again and again. So I think there's just a lot of this like energy vomiting stuff that mm-hmm. goes on, which is a lack of self-management. And when you don't know how to manage yourself, your own energy, that bleeds out into every area of your life. And that will be why you have issues, you have trouble in mm-hmm. relationships, why you deflect things without realizing it, why you struggle with money. Mm-hmm. Money likes precision, money likes clarity, money likes bigness. And just like career-wise, logistically, it's the same energy that blocks people. So I think that that's a really important skill for people to learn.
Definitely. And I think it starts with that awareness. And like, luckily for me, I had you.
Yeah.
To be like, and again, it started with business, right? Mm-hmm. It started with work. It's like, okay, these are my things, like these are my boundaries for you as a person that are working with
Yeah.
me. But then I get to see also personally like how you move, and that informs the way that I'm like, well, now I have permission to move this way. And it's like, that was the biggest thing that I realized so quickly was like, where am I just word vomiting? And it's like, that's coming as a person who has done years and years and years of healing already. So I already felt like I maybe didn't do that as much as I would have 5 years ago. But it's like the way that we still do that. And it's like, we're wasting our time. We're wasting everyone's time. And it's like, you can do that sometimes. And this is what you said, you know, you're like, you can do this during therapy, or like if it is a container where it's like you're catching up with a friend and you're both like able to just kind of like go through and process externally that way. But it's like, if you're just doing that all the time with everyone and like not setting that container, it's so unproductive. And it's like, you really don't get any clarity. Like that's what I started to realize for myself was like, holy shit, like of course I don't have clarity in any of my areas of life, because like I literally can't even sort through what I feel.
Yeah.
And so why am I talking about it?
Yeah.
Like it's so much faster to just go within, you know, so much faster.
I know. Literally.
And then you can talk to someone about it and like have those reflections.
Yeah.
Because you and I both need those, but it's like, yeah, we need those once we actually figure out what our question is.
Well, I think it's exactly what you said about like, are we deciding, hey, can you help me process this? And we're going to open up the space for me to just process it with you, versus sharing something or making a point. And I think a lot of people use other people to process their own stuff. And I think that's a really big form of energy vomiting. Yeah. And that's not how you should move through the world. Yeah. And like you can't process everything with everybody else around you. That's why people are so confused. Yeah. They're so confused because they're trying to process it with everybody. And you shouldn't be processing with everybody. You should learn to process things yourself with your own tools. And then you should have specific people, usually people you're paying, to be honest, who you really do a lot of the processing with. And then here and there, you have a friend who maybe you process with. But like, I personally think that should be done with professionals, you know, unbiased professionals. And I think a lot of people move through the world always wanting to process with other people. And you got to look at like, why are you afraid to process by yourself? Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of reasons why people don't want to process by themselves. I think maybe they don't trust themselves is one piece. They don't trust the conclusion they're going to get to. But I also think there's this thing about validation. And I feel like this word has a negative connotation, but it's like an intention thing. You know, it's like, can you see my struggles, see my emotions? And if you can process by yourself and just reach a conclusion or just make a statement, then what is it that you feel like you're missing if people didn't see you go through that whole processing yourself, you know? But that's not an attractive look. And I think it really depends on the space you're in, you know, like, and I know a lot of people like in our community, they want to be in a higher caliber space, in a higher caliber rooms, and you can't be doing that in a higher caliber room, you know? So I think it's that, like, being able to process, and then you share what you've processed, and that's where there's a really interesting conversation. It's like, can you do that internally? I was thinking about, I think one of the best skills I learned in school as like in high school was, did you have to do those like automatic essays or whatever? Timed essays?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And people hated those, and I hated them, but I also kind of liked them. I liked them because I hated like to have to go write an essay at home, and it felt like an ordeal. And I was like, okay, well, I'm stuck here for 45 minutes, write it one shot, and then I'm done. And so I kind of like that aspect of it. But I think that was one of the best skills for me in my life, because it taught me process in your head, and then you write what you've processed, and it had to be very clear. And with more reps, you know, that's how I learned. One shot, like, you write it, one shot, it's done. Yeah. And everything I wrote in, you know, college, I never did like outlines, rough drafts. I did it one time because I learned to process and write the final draft. And I think a lot of people spend way too much time in the processing and not enough just like go into the final draft. Yeah. And it's, I mean, there's a lot I could say about education, but there are a lot of things that we used to do. I don't know if they still do that. Maybe they do, but like, that are important life skills. And I think people don't realize the correlation there, the connection there between these things we learn at school. And it's like critical thinking, you know, we've lost that. So I think that also has to do with, I mean, this is all connected to boundaries. It's about, how do you communicate? Yep. And communication is about talking, and it's about listening. And that's the big piece, is if you don't have, I mean, we could talk about talking and how to communicate, but in that way, but communicating in terms of how do I listen, most people don't really know how to listen. And that's where the boundaries get really leaky, I think.
What do you think that connection, like, what do you think that points to on a deeper level?
Needing validation.
Yeah.
Needing validation. Needing to be seen.
Yeah. It's coming from that, like you said, that disempowered place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I can relate to for sure. It's like, I need someone to see me and tell me like what I should be getting out of this or whatever, so that I can feel like I'm on the right path or I'm doing the right thing or, you know, whatever. And it's like, it's only when I learned to do that for myself that I actually felt good about everything that I was doing, you know? And like you said, if you do need another professional opinion, professional being the key word, then that can be very helpful. And I think the real mastery comes when you really do it for yourself. Yeah. Especially like if you're just willing to do it for yourself first. Like, I'm just going to sit with this before I go to anyone else. And then I'll get the reflections that the other people have. Yeah. But I think, and we were just talking about this. It's like, can you do it for yourself? Like the empowerment piece. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people can't. And then there's a lot of people that can almost too well, or they lean too far in that direction and they actually need to open up more.
That's true.
But I think so much of that has to do with, like, do you have a container where you can share this stuff consistently? And whether it's needing to actually have that team. I mean, all high achievers have a team. You have teams of people that you work with in different capacities, different types of healers, therapists, coaches, healers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also, what is your social life like? We've talked about this. Like, if you are always so excited to talk to that one person because you want to spill everything to them, or you feel like this is the one person I can chat with about this, and then you word vomit every time you're with them, that's just pointing to you don't have enough space in your life to share about who you really are and what you really want to talk about. There can't just be one person you can talk to about it. I don't think that's healthy at all, and that puts so much energetic pressure on that person, and it ends up not even being a productive conversation because it's like you've been deprived of a space to share for a long time, and then you're just fire hosing that person with what you want to share, and then it's, you know, what's the question? So I think there's a lot of pieces of ourselves that kind of we keep inside, and then there's that one person we can open up to about it. And I think if you connect with that, you should look at how can I create more space in my life, different people I can connect with. Maybe there's also professional settings I add in, different types of support where I'm able to, you know, let the air out around this more often. So I'm not feeling like I'm depending on that person to be my space to share this. Yeah. Yeah.
So where do you feel like this has shown up the most for you recently? Like, it started for you learning with like business, and then has there been anywhere where you've come up against a lot of tension with this, where it's been hard for you?
Like, which part of it? To have boundaries?
To have boundaries, yeah.
Well,
or do you think it's something that once you understood?
No, I'm like always going in and out with it. And I think especially as you add new people into your life, you know, you learn different energetic dynamics at different phases in career and different focuses. Boundaries are different.
Yeah.
And sometimes it also looks like removing, changing boundaries, you know, in a way where I'm actually opening myself up to more energy as well. That's some places I'm doing that, you know? And so there have been phases where I've needed to like focus on myself and heal, where I needed to be a lot less available for other people. And then other times where I'm like really wanting to open up and connect with a lot of different people and make myself available. So that changes all the time depending on phase of life. But I think for me, business and personal is so connected that it's not separate things. And I think it's a different version of the same dynamic that I've had for a long time, that I think everybody who's like a coach or a healer has to look at. It's like this boundary between the work you do and how you show up for your personal relationships. Yeah. And it can be really easy for people in your personal life to, instead of hanging out, like want a session, basically. And for me, that's all about how I feel in that dynamic. like if I'm feeling like, if I'm sitting there and I'm like, I should be getting paid for this, or like I just don't want to hold this right now, I don't want to deal with this, then that's my sign of like, you know, my boundaries getting crossed. So where have I not been clear with my energy around it? And for me, I had to learn to respond differently because I was in that archetype of like healer all the time. And so when my friends would come to me with things, the way I would reply would be the same way I would reply as a coach. And so I've had to learn. And look, there are certainly times I apply those skills, but generally I've had to learn, like I do respond differently to people if I'm in a session with them than if my friends are telling me things. And I realized I had put this pressure on myself, and a lot of this was, you know, inner child stuff, where if someone shared something with me, I created this story in my head that it was my responsibility to fix it. I was thinking about it that way. That person wasn't, and sometimes people do come at me with that energy, but also sometimes people don't. They're just sharing. And I was, because this is how I grew up, you know, like if someone's telling me they're having a problem, they're telling me because I have to find the solution. And that was a lot of pressure that I was putting on myself. And so I realized that's not what's going on. Like people can just share and I can just hold space and empathize. And I actually was chatting with one of my friends last week about, you know, how I feel so different with my emotions. And I told her, I said, I just don't feel like I can hold what I used to be able to hold. It's been visceral for me. Like just being in a room and feeling people communicate about things. And where I realized a couple months ago, I could be like solid and strong and like hold the container. I couldn't. Like, I just was like, I need to get out of here. I felt like a tidal wave of water was coming my way and I just got swept away. And I used to feel like a solid rock. And because now I'm so much more in my emotions. And she said, well, it's that she was like, I don't know that you should think about it that way. It's not your job to hold the space. It's just your job to share empathy and to empathize. That's all you have to do. You don't have to hold the space. You don't have to hold the container for someone. Just empathize. And that was a really good reframe for me. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can just feel with you. And so that was a different shift. But I think it's definitely how I show up in those personal relationships. And I have to be careful about why people want to spend time with me. And I've had that for so long, like, you know, feeling like people are trying to use me or just want something. So I'm definitely more guarded in that area. And then when I'm close to people, does this feel like a session? I mean, it's tough when it's your career as well, you know? And I think also for me, I've got to have people around me that are moving in the same direction in the same way. And that's not like a judgment. It's just like there's different ways to get to where you want to go and different flows. And the flow that feels good for me is like zeroed in, hit it hard. And I need to be around people who are also zeroed in on their stuff and hitting it hard. And it doesn't really work when I'm zeroed in and hitting it hard and like somebody else has a very different flow and they're trying to pull me into their flow. And then I get frustrated. So people either just who are close to me either need to just honor that that's my flow and not make it about them, or like they're not really super in my field. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think that's all, it goes back to the self-awareness of you just knowing, like, this is what works for me. Yeah. This is what works for my relationships. Like, and you are able to communicate that, but a lot of people aren't, you know? And so it's like, if you don't even know what you need and you don't know how to express it, like, how can you expect someone else to honor it? Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I think that's a big one, because I think that sometimes people maybe think that they are expressing boundaries because when it gets really bad, they'll express it. Yeah. But it's like, where was the like energetic leaky gut from the very beginning that caused the whole thing?
Totally. Well, I think if people are struggling with that, I would say like take a step back and take stock of things that are going on right now in your life and just past experiences you've had where you feel overwhelmed, where you feel like a boundary was crossed, where you feel like something's pulling on you, where you're not feeling good, because boundaries are about what you're available for and what you're not. And even if you don't know how to express, these are my boundaries, I think that could be a hard question for people. If I'm like, what are your boundaries? They might not be able to come up with that, like a list. But if I'm saying, but just to get started,
Totally.
If you can say, it doesn't make me feel good when XYZ happens in my life. Like, start writing a list of that, and that will show you I'm not available for these things.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And when I express boundaries to people, that is how I express them. I will say, it doesn't make me feel good when I'm focusing on a project and I'm taking time for myself, and somebody continues to reach out to me and tell me things are urgent when they know I'm not available. Like, that doesn't feel good for me, you know? So it really just starts with knowing things that don't feel good for you, because that's a sign that your boundaries are being crossed.
Yeah, definitely.
Or where they need to be there.
Right.
If you're feeling drained, they need to be there. I'm available for this. I'm not available for that.
Yeah.
But I think that the bigger conversation, I think that we need to talk about, and you're a good person to...
I feel like I know where this is going.
case study. When you're really intuitive.
Yeah.
When you're really intuitive, and when you feel people's energy deeply, and you feel your own emotions deeply, like you feel everything deeply, these are the people that struggle the most. Am I wrong?
No, not wrong.
Am I wrong?
Not wrong.
Right? And
it's a whole ocean.
Yeah, it's a whole... So, like, let's get underneath that. Like, why is that tough? Like, let's talk about it.
That's what... Well, I wanted to go there, too. I think it's exactly what you told me yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like... it's like going in steps, right? Baby steps. And it's like, okay, I know I need to have better boundaries. But it's like, what's underneath all of that, at least for me, if I'm the case study, is like, where am I not having fucking boundaries with myself?
Yeah.
Like, where am I...
Go on.
Like the abandonment wound thing of like, like I'm the one keeping myself in this uncomfortable feeling of feeling this person's energy because I'm keeping myself there mentally. If I were to just not, I wouldn't be, I mean, it's not like, you know, perfect or whatever necessarily, but it's like, I would feel like, let's say 90% less.
Yeah.
Because I'm keeping myself there.
Yeah.
But what were you going to say?
Well, this is where this gets interesting, and you're a good person, because I think so many people in our audience are like
soul merge like me.
Are like that, because everyone in our audience, like deep feelers, you know, and deep feelers, very intuitive, and just see people on a soul level and love people on a soul level. And so, if you can be really honest in this conversation, this will be helpful, because we're gonna get super honest. We're gonna get somewhere. But my point is, there's a self-abandonment thing. We could go all down that, but there's a piece of you that you don't want to have boundaries. Like, you don't. So let's say you're in a situation with somebody where you want them to show up for you the way, you know, you want. And you know what? It's a really good example of this for people. Parents. I see this a lot with people who, and you have a great relationship with your parents, so it's different, but people who have really had tough childhoods where the parental relationship wasn't good, and the parent is like, there's no boundaries, and the parent wants to make them responsible for everything. And as an adult, you know, you have these conversations about like setting boundaries with your parents. Your mom can't tug on you like that, and people feel like they can't. They feel like they can't. Or like, I mean, this also happens in relationships, right? The ex, right? The person you're dating. Like, these are places where people struggle with the relationship, with the boundaries. And what I want to get at is like, why don't you want to set it? And I'm not your logical brain. Like, there is a piece of you deep down, the deep feeler I love to merge with people, that doesn't want the boundary.
Yeah.
So
because
like,
I don't want to be separated from them. I just want to be them and them be me and be able to hold it all.
Yeah. I want to be you.
I just want to be you.
That's it.
And I just want to be like, oh, I'm powerful enough.
Yeah. There's like
my love is powerful
enough
to hold it all and to heal us both and like to be all of it. And there's also that like, I don't even want to say toxic, but it's like, I'm the Scorpio. Of course I can hold it all. Like, I can hold both of our shadow, you know? And it's like, I mean, I joke with Carlos about this all the time. I'm like, I'm not just carrying my shit. I'm carrying yours and the neighbors and this. And it's like, you know, that's a choice though.
Yeah. That's
because meanwhile, he's la-di-da in his own little world, only focused on his self-healing. I'm like, must be fucking nice, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, but like you said, there's the piece of me that doesn't want that because I could. I could just be la-di-da in my own healing world. And it's like, I don't. And I was thinking about that yesterday too, actually, because you told me this a long, long time ago of like, explore the gift of soul merging and all that means. And it's like, yeah, it's a gift. And you have to be willing to explore all of the pain as well.
Yeah.
And not avoid it.
Yeah.
And turn your head to it, you know?
Let me describe this to people listening.
Okay.
So if I'm looking at people's energy fields and how they're relating, there's different versions of that, right? So it could be like, imagine you're an energy blob, right? And there's two like energy blobs, and they look like fireballs. Let's just say that. And it's like two energies. And you could have chords with people where you're feeling the energy or like feeling their energy. When we're talking about soul merging, this isn't technical, so don't get too caught up with it. But what I'm seeing psychically is explain to us the dynamic, okay? And it's like, let's say I'm painting and I have, red over here and blue over here, and they're next to each other. And then what Kaylan does is she's blue and she jumps over into red and she wants to make purple, right? And now she's feeling everything because now you're purple and now she's completely disoriented. Because she actually thinks is she red or is she purple? Yeah. She's not blue anymore. And so of course you've created a situation where there is no boundary inherently to have that relationship. Like the way the relationship was formed was we didn't come together as two colors next to each other holding hands. We came together making purple. Yeah. And so when you vibrationally relate that way from the beginning, there is no boundary. You can't undo. Now you're purple. Yeah. You can't go back to red and blue.
That's what I was going to say. You can't go back. It's not like you separate after that.
Right? So there's something to like how we initially connect in. And this is where, with you, I was like, noticing where immediately you can creep in and you merge, and now there's no way to create a boundary, which isn't true, but you know what I'm saying, like that's how it feels. And also everything that's theirs you feel as yours.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that the other day too, because after the membership call, when you were talking about like you are the oracle, just let everything come through you and experience it, and it's not yours. And so that helped me from like not even a logical standpoint, but just like as I've been experiencing everything, that I really stopped to think about it the other day. And I was like, yeah, I have no idea what's mine and what's not mine. And I haven't even been like orienting from that way, because I've just been like, whatever I'm feeling, I'm transmuting no matter what it is or whose it is. Yeah. Which, that is a whole other thing. But it's interesting because I used to be so overwhelmed by things, thinking like, oh, this was mine, and here it is another person's completely, which is the first thing that you ever reflected to me about that. But yeah, and I mean, it's like you said, it's a gift, but just like any gift, you have to use it responsibly. Yeah. And do you want it to be a gift or do you want it to be a curse? Yeah. Yeah. Because it can be both.
I know. Well, and that's why I want to get to, like, it's like for people to realize, why do I do that? Like, why do you soul merge? And there is a deep piece when people do this and they relate that way. Because from that example, now we're getting to, it's all about how you initiated this relationship. Right. So if you're initiating all of your relationships because you don't know any different, becoming purple instead of staying blue and saying, hey, red, let's hang out.
Let's see what we have for each other. Yeah.
When you always are purple, you're like, oh my God, I'm in a sea of everything. And now I'm crying, and you're feeling everybody's stuff. And you're like, I don't want to feel all this, but there's a piece of you that does, which is the piece of you that wanted to become purple, first of all, because that's the piece of you that is trying to self-protect. That is the piece of you that thinks, if I merge, that person will have no choice but to love me because we're one. Yeah. Right? Because that's the fear of rejection. And so if I merge with you, now we're infinitely connected.
You can't get away.
You can't get away. So of course, it's a way of almost trying to force someone to love us. Yeah. And then it usually doesn't go the way we want at all. And we don't feel very good. And so it's, if you can be okay with, some people are going to reject me. I might go hang out with red, and red might be like, I don't want to hang out with you, blue. If you can be okay with that, you won't feel the need to merge. Yeah. And that's where you can have a real boundary. Yeah. Does that make sense?
No, definitely. Definitely. I I feel like now I'm also, and this could just be logically, I don't know if my energy body is caught up yet. I feel like I'm fine with the rejection because I'm like, dude, I would much rather have rejection as red or as blue, whatever I am, than while I'm purple.
Yeah.
You know? So it's better to like have to just go knowing that. And I feel like as I've moved through this a lot, I'm like, yeah, like, again, what I always say, like, whatever's for me is for me. Even if that person was for me in just that moment, for that activation, for me to see that thing, like, they were still for me in a moment. I feel like for me, it's more of now exploring the, like, that saving thing that we always talk about, like, my love can bring you up to whatever. And it's like, yeah, but why would I abandon myself and put myself in a situation in order to, like, do that for someone else? Like, where is this coming from, you know? So I'm sitting with that now.
Well, where do you think that comes from?
I mean, I literally, like, just was thinking about this in the car on the way here, so I don't know, but well,
you can process it live.
Here we go, guys. It's I mean, I think that it's complicated because it comes from this good place, right? Like, this has always been my gift, is this just like not projecting in a bad way, but just like, I see it the way that you always talk about, like, how you project your field out. It's like, that's how I project love out. Like, I've always just been able to be like, boom, here, it's on tap. Here's some love, you know? And so it comes from that, but then it's like actually moving in the world and like being a person who does that and like all the coping mechanisms that I've created. And so I think that it's because like I meet someone and I can sense how we're on a similar frequency and I'm like, oh, you're safe. I'm purple now. And so instead of like allowing there to be that dance and that like, you know, of like, are you going to calibrate to me? And also like, can I remain blue? And so I just jump the gun basically, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm like, I want to get underneath it because
too.
it's so, I know you're saying, I know what you're saying, but there's something
you
still.
Think it's still the rejection?
I do.
Yeah.
Because I think that it's not realizing, it's a thing that, you know, most people do. Like when we first meet someone, how we adjust ourselves.
Yeah.
For things to be cool, you know, like we can be chameleons, I guess. And I think there's something to, I don't know, I'm trying to unpack this. Okay, yeah, love's on tap, right? But it's like, I think it's about the way you're relating to that or like what that looks like or what that really means, you know, because there's something about, it's not just like love's on tap. It's like love's on tap and like, I need you to plug into this for this experience versus like, I'm just love on tap running around and not plugging in.
Right. No, yeah, I think that's...
Do you know the difference?
Yeah. I think that that's more it. Because, like, I do think it... Obviously, the rejection thing is there and has been there, but I'm just reflecting of, like, this most recent thing. It feels like that wasn't quite as much it because I feel like I was truly fully my authentic self and was just like, cool, I'm crazy and intense and this is me, accept it. And it was like, they did meet me. And then if they don't anymore, it's like, okay, cool, that's your fucking loss. But I think it's more of that. It's more of like this, and this is the same like with the disempowerment piece as far as like what we talked about with closure, but it's also the same disempowerment piece of like, can I just have love on tap and just be love on tap without anyone plugging into it? I think it's more of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't need anyone to plug into me. I'm source.
Well, I think there's a piece of us that wants, there's two things here. One is there's a piece of us that wants to feel like we're not alone and we want to see evidence that other people are like me. And so if I hold all this love for you and, you know, create this amazing container for you, you're going to meet me there and then we're going to see that we're the same. And so I think that's one piece that happens, right? Wanting validation for, and that's wanting validation for ourselves so we don't feel alone.
Yeah.
And so part of that, you know, is to be okay with maybe I'm one of one.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to get other people to be like me, to do it like me, to relate like me. But I think the other piece, which, and I know all of this comes from a good place. I'm thinking about times in my life where I have been in this energy of like, you know, if I just love you enough, you've got to be able to meet me. And so much of that was coming from like I was unwilling to give up on someone. And I think that was my own wounds of feeling like people had given up on me. That was the big piece of it. but I was taking someone else's energy as a personal failure. I was inherently making myself responsible for it. And I was looking for, it's another way of looking for validation that like, I'm enough. I'm successful. And I will tell you, the times when my career has not been flowing the way I want it to be have been when I've done that with personal relationships. When I'm getting that evidence that like I'm successful in my reality related to my business, I don't have that pattern in relationships because I'm like, I already know that, but it's like when business has been just, I don't know, doing its thing, we're not growing, or I'm not like achieving something. I've noticed as I'm thinking about like ex-boyfriends and stuff, I'm like, that's when I was in this energy of, if I love you enough, like you'll succeed, you'll change, you'll become something else. And that's like evidence of that I'm successful and that I'm influential or whatever it is. I was just looking for that through someone else, which is super not healthy.
Yeah, no. And it's interesting because again, it's like, I mean, you're saying all these things that resonate and that I've been thinking about, because it's like, I'm finally at a place where it's like, I know my power. And I mean, obviously we all are continuing to grow in that all the time. It will continue to grow for my whole life. But I'm like, I truly can tell you, like, I know my power. And so it's like, I don't feel like I need to change someone or to love them or to call them up to like have that evidence. And at the same time, it's like, of course we always, it's nice to have that validation. It's nice to like, whatever. And I think we talked about this on the podcast the last time. It's like, because there are certain people that do come into our orbit that we do love and we do like rise and we get this spark together and we like jump on this frequency wave together. I feel like it's like, I'm always looking for that. Or like always expecting that. And it's like, can I just let a connection, a person, a relationship of any kind, like you said, like, can I just surrender to like whatever's coming up in my field? I'm supposed to see it and experience it for whatever it is, instead of like, oh, this has to be I have to turn purple.
Yeah. Totally. The thing that's related to this is it's really hard for us to, it's like changing your diet. It's really hard to get rid of processed foods if you feel like, well, nothing that I'm going to eat is going to taste good. But when you start eating healthy food that tastes good, you naturally kind of can let go of processed things, right? Because the replacement feels good. And so for a lot of people with this boundaries issue, and I'll tell you, I have this thought all the time with clients, with friends, people who I see are just like, need better boundaries. Like a lot of this would be solved if you express yourself creatively. We live in a day and age where anyone can create any type of content they want. Like you can get validation from strangers. And I think a lot of people, I'm just telling you my opinion, a lot of people, I'm like, why don't you like put this on Instagram? Like why don't you put like do something with it creative, like make a YouTube video about it. Don't like just go giving a spiel to everybody, you know what I mean? I'm like, you can creatively fuel it. Write a book. Like write a book, you know? So I think that a lot of people should explore putting it into a creative thing where they can get validation, and it's like funneling that, channeling that in a productive way. And it's the same person we're talking about, right? Like super deep feeler, very intuitive, very creative, very emotional. Funnel that, channel that. You can help so many people with that. Like share your writing, share your, I mean, it doesn't have to be for your career, but it's just so that it's channeled in a healthy way. And you can get that validation from all kinds of people. So I do think that creative piece, people should step into more, and I think that would kind of scratch that itch because they're like looking for this validation in their personal lives or career where it's not the place, right? So I don't know, what can you do creatively? Maybe write a book. I don't know. Maybe start an Instagram account, whatever. But the other piece is community. Like really fostering, creating community where it satiates you. That's the difference. And when you don't feel like you're satiated fully by your community, that's where the boundaries will be tough because you're like trying to pull something. And so I think for a lot of people, it's really putting that time and effort into cultivating a strong group of people around them, broadening that sphere, having different people, and like having a very solid community where you feel seen and validated and you don't have to prove yourself, and you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, and it's not just a couple of people here and there. Like it's like there's this deficiency that drives a lot of the leaky boundary energy because we're trying to connect. All of us we're just trying to connect. Right. And so when you feel like you are grounded in, I have a lot of solid connection, just as my way of being. I have connection. I have people see me. You're not trying to do that in other relationships.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, this goes along with that. This happened to me the other day. It's like, you and I talk about this a lot of just like needing something to be new inspiration. Yeah. Like I can just go out with my friends to the beach and we don't do anything. Yeah. But like I get new inspiration from like just the conversation we had or just the look on their face or whatever. And it's like, of course, yes, all those things, like you said, like you have to, I do have those things with my community, but it's like, even as I'm going through this where I'm like, oh, I'm purple, whatever, with something or someone else, if I can still just be with my community and be like, oh, like you said, like I'm good. Like, what am I tripping about?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and that newness, I think, is key.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's we are trying to always connect with new energies. Like we have that hunger. And so if you are just kind of bored, which a lot of that has to do with who you're hanging out with. Like if you're hanging out with people that it's just same stuff all the time and they don't learn new things or they don't go live life and have experiences, it just does get boring. Yeah. And so then you like have these weird behaviors to try and like create new experiences for yourself. And so we do a lot of this, like creating our own drama. I mean, everybody does this. Everybody does this. Like this is the human experience. Yeah. Look at people with, I mean, somehow it got so complicated to be a fucking human and eat food, right? Yeah. I mean, we're spending hours creating drama about am I carnivore, am I fucking vegan? Like we got that drama. We got drama about relationships and dating and like we got drama about business. You know, I'm like, working like when I was doing business coaching, I'm like, you know, all my conversations are just self-created drama. Like this is just self-created. It's all shit in our head. Like it's all we do as humans. Why do we do that? Because we're trying to find exciting shit. Yeah. So we create our own drama because we're like, okay, this is something to keep me occupied. It's gonna be a drama. Yeah. You know, so there's something about just like own the fact that you like the drama. Yeah. I say this to my boyfriend. I'm like, you like the drama. Just own it. You know, like
no, 100%.
So at least I own it, right? Yeah. But it gives us something to do. Yeah. And so if you don't want that, then give yourself something else to do, you know? And so I know for me, the more I'm learning, the more I'm like, you know, listening to podcasts about random things, meeting new people, having different conversations, just newness, I avoid those patterns. And then I know when I'm more like not in new energy, I definitely will spiral. Yeah. And I will create my own drama.
Yeah. Well, it's such a good point because I was thinking about this a few minutes ago, but you just made my point for me, which is like, it's the searching the new, becoming purple. Yeah. It's like, because I've become purple in healthy ways my whole life, you know? But then it's like when you start to get bored, you're like, oh shit, I can do this. Yeah. And it's like that for me, it's the very like Scorpio, like highest of highs, lowest of lows. And like you said, like finally telling myself like, oh, I like this cycle. Like that's why I'm on the ride. Like I got on this ride, you know? And that changes it because it's like, now I can appreciate the high highs and the low lows, but I'm not searching those out, or at least I'm, you know, trying to uncover the layers of consciousness to where I'm not just like looking for those because it is too much, you know? But it's like the newness. So it's if I can just look for something new that's not a new deep purple relationship, then it can still satisfy that, you know, especially for someone like you and I are the same. It's like, yeah, we can go to a room where I'm meeting 10 new people and I'm like, sweet, I just expanded my whole consciousness. Like I don't need to go become purple with someone.
Yeah, I know. Well, I think there's also this like awareness of, if you're an artist, you always need a muse.
Yeah, I know.
And if we don't
call me out like that.
if we don't choose our muse, like it'll get toxic. You know what I mean?
Okay, my only muse is my dog from now on.
And then that gets boring. I mean, you know what I'll say? Yeah. I'll say a few things. And I've talked about this before with, you know, when I was doing my first brain rewiring thing, I got to this point. I was just so happy all the time. And I was like, I felt numb. Because I was happy all the time. My whole life, it was like this push and pull with emotions and things would happen. I'd feel deeply and then I'd write about it. And it was this whole, it fueled me. It fueled the creative artist within me. And then when my life was just like great because I had no problems and I rewired everything, every thought, everything's great. Everything's for me. No problems. So I was just like, I have no.
What do I do now?
Yeah, I have no inspiration. I had nothing pulling me into the full spectrum of feelings. Yeah, and so I was like, it actually really fucked up my creativity. Yeah, it really fucked up my creativity. I'm telling you, I felt bored, and I felt numb in a very different way. And it was it was before it was that set me up it set me up for after. I think I've shared how I like worked with a coach specifically on I need to learn to cry. I had gone through so much trauma and crying and whatever, and then went through the whole brain rewiring thing, and then became just like this super happy, everything is great person. So much so that I literally couldn't cry anymore. And then I got super sick because all the stuffed emotions, because I was just like wiring past it. And then I had to learn to cry again. And when I learned to cry again, I had so much creativity flowing out of me. Like I had no inspo. Yeah. So I think there's something to that. And that's where I'm saying, for me, I think that being able to feel low frequency emotions is important. Like for me, it is not my goal to not ever feel low frequency emotions. It's to be able to feel those in constructive, healthy ways. Does that make sense? Definitely. It's very, very different. And I felt like I just lost life force when I was just only like happy all the time. Yeah. And I just think the artist within us needs that. Or you think about singer-songwriters and you listen to the lyrics about their life, and you're like, whoa, these people have these crazy ass lives. And it's like, well, do they manifest that because they're looking for something to write about? Or do they just attract that because, oh, how do they attract that? No. Yeah. It's not a coincidence. Or do they just romanticize or kind of blow up what's in front of them? Maybe. And that could be a healthy way to do it too. But I mean, that's the thing. When you are an artist, think about that. When you're an artist and you need that kind of stimulation to feel your full spectrum, how is it that you create that in your life? And I think there are healthy ways of creating that muse, and there are unhealthy ways. Yeah, absolutely. I was just, again, thinking about that. I thought about it a lot the past few days. And I was thinking of it in a positive way. I was like, again, like, I'm bringing gratitude to this, like that I get to experience this full spectrum, the high highs, the low lows, and feel this richness. And I can cultivate, I was literally thinking that, I was like, and I can cultivate this in ways that don't feel so dysregulating. Yeah. And at the end of the day too, it's like, as we're living and getting these experiences, like, it's important to know what you want. Like, that's another thing you had told me. You were like, well, what do you actually want? Because you're obviously like having these experiences again and again. So part of you wants it. You got to acknowledge the piece of you that wants it. Yeah. And then if you don't want it, like, change. You have to actually claim that and change it. Because if you're just going through life wanting to be purple, like, and again, like, speaking to our audience who is like me, it's like, if you're just wanting to be purple all the time and you're not acknowledging the piece of yourself that wants that, you're going to keep creating it, and it's going to be in unhealthy ways. 100%. Because that's how powerful you are. Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like, whatever you're wanting, you're going to create it. So, well, here's the thing I'll say that helped me. Like, realizing that I could be an observer and make commentary and have an emotional response as like commentary, rather than needing to attract in experiences in my life or be involved in the drama. Does that make sense? And when I realized that, my life stopped being dramatic. Yeah. And my life is really only dramatic now if I need to learn a lesson, which usually it like blows up and then it's done. But I get more of my inspiration now. Like, I just observe. I don't have to create anything. I'm just actually observing and then allowing myself to feel in relation to that and like make commentary. And that hits that need for me. Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. I think for me, it's going to be like finding the healthy ways to experience it. Because I'm such an experiencer, but maybe observing, like you said, like observing the experience. Because that resonates for me with like learning certain lessons in my life. Like, I always used to say that I learned from other people's mistakes. Like, even growing up, I'm like 8 years old. I'm like, I learned, Yeah. But my Venus and Sag is just like, there's a whole world out there to experience. We got to live it all, you know? Yeah. But yeah, you don't have to be so in it yourself every 100%. Time. You don't have to create a new movie every single time that you want to learn a lesson. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Which I think kind of brings us back to maybe where this originally came from. I think this relationship piece is like friendships. Let's bring back to friendships. Yeah. And I think for me, and I'll go back to one of the big differences I noticed between like the people I was around in LA and the patterns I started noticing with different people I met in San Diego. And this was early on, I noticed this. I was like, there's so much more drama down here. Like in a different way. I mean, there's a lot of LA drama, but the circles I ran in, it was much more like people were just talking about what they were doing and creating things. There wasn't drama.
Yeah.
Like you would know about drama, but it wasn't ever connected to you. And down here, it felt like, I remember just meeting different people, and because I was like finding friends, and I was like, I feel like everywhere I go, there's just like a lot of drama. Like it was very, and I remember thinking it's very like, sorry, this is a judgy thought, but this is just what I thought. I was 24, 25, and I was like, this feels so just like small town energy of like, you have nothing better to do, so you're just like making up drama. And it was like, I had to it really fucked my nervous system, because I felt like everywhere I went, everybody I hung out with, because I was just like meeting new people, I was like, how do you do anything? How do you get anything done when you're dealing with all this personal stuff? But and then I was like, and then I remember telling someone, I was like, I think that you have too much free time if you can create this much drama. Like I think you have too much free time, because I'm like, I can't deal with this. So there's that side of it. Like maybe we do have too much free time, and I think when we're left too much in our own heads, there's that. But I guess I'll ask you if there's anything you've noticed, or like, I guess any question, or like anything you've noticed about how people relate to me related to boundaries.
Yeah. Oh my God. People do not like it. Like people, and it's like, I don't know. It's interesting for me because now everyone knows like I have no boundaries, right? Or at least like I didn't used to have any. And so, but with you, it was like, I never had any resistance to it personally. Like I was just like, oh wow, she knows exactly what she needs. And communicates it so clearly, you know. But I also
came in hot with it, and I think you were coming from a situation
where there were no boundaries. So I was like, yes, please God, give me some. 100%. But no, I've seen people not like. Well, what I will say is people who are working with you professionally don't tend to have as much of a problem with it. And when I say professionally, I don't mean like clients necessarily, but like people doing collaborations with you, things like that, like other entrepreneurs. And then there are a lot of people like me who, again, have never been, it's just because we have a lot of like anxious attachment and like abandonment wound stuff. And so they don't hear the boundary through like you and your self-love. They hear it through like the rejection or just like what I've seen a lot, I feel like, is like people who just truly don't know how to like conceptual, like they don't even understand that it's an actual boundary. It's like they don't see a wall, they see like a tiny line in the sand and they feel like the water is just gonna wash it away anyway, you know?
Well, because they're not used to people upholding it. It's just a lot of talk. It's like a lot of talk, no action energy.
Definitely.
People are used to.
Yeah.
So people just say all kinds of shit and they don't mean it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's what it is. And you're like, no, I'm serious. This is the boundary and this is what it is and this is what I'm holding. And people just continually like don't respect them.
Yeah, well, I think it depends. I think most people do, but I think
it's
like,
a lot of people do.
You know, in general, but I think that's why it stands out.
Right,
to us,
exactly.
Right, because usually people are very like respectful and like, and like other entrepreneurs, like that's not coming up. It's not even a thing. So then when it does come up, it's like so obvious in the field, like this one person. Yeah, you know,
exactly.
But I think that for some reason, for people with me, it feels. I don't know if it's like something I represent for them, but I've noticed this, like when it comes up, it's like a very intense thing. And I think it maybe goes beyond just I'm the first person that's actually upheld something or like said, I don't feel good with this, or I'm not bending over for this, for what you want. But I think that sometimes people take it more personally. Yeah. I don't know if it's a psychic thing or.
Well, I feel like on a certain level, you're just mirroring to them like what they deeply need. Yeah. And that's why it's so deeply triggering. Yeah. And they can't, like, at least from what I know, I don't think that they usually recognize it as that. Like you said, it's more of just like taking it personally. Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm going to say, honestly, sometimes, because I'm thinking about different times this has happened. And I think that a lot of people, they don't mean to be, but they are actually have moved through much of their life manipulating people. Yes. And I don't think they mean to be manipulative. And I don't think that's coming from a bad place. But I do think they're used to manipulating people to get their way. And again, that makes it sound like they're like, it's not what I'm talking about. People people pleasers
Yep.
are manipulative.
Yep. And it goes back to the communication thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking, because I used to do this, and I mean, we all do this in some ways, right? But it's like, if you don't feel good enough, not good enough like is worth thing, but like if you don't feel like comfortable enough to state exactly what you want directly, vulnerably, you're going to say it in a roundabout way to try and make the other person understand. It's the classic, like, let's just say me and you. Like, I know you have a shit ton of things to do after this, but it's like, let's say we didn't just go over my whole life, and I wanted to talk to you about my life, right? It's like, well, I don't even know how I would say it, because I wouldn't do this, but it's like trying to get you to do something without just saying like, hey, could we go talk for 30 minutes and get coffee? Because I would really love to hear your opinion about this, even though I know you're busy. Yeah. And it's like, that seems like a very easy, simple thing to do. But it's like, when you're a people pleaser and like you don't want to make the other person feel bad, you feel like you just have to emotionally manipulate them. And so like you said, like they're not consciously like, but it's like, I don't feel like I can just say this. So maybe if I say it this way, and then based on how she responds, I can say, well, maybe this week, Yeah.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It is manipulating, but it's not coming from a bad place. And I am so attuned to people manipulating. Like I see it so clearly. And that, I think that's where it gets very triggering, because I will like reply with a boundary of like, no, you're asking me to do this when I'm saying I can't do that. And it's usually, with someone who's very sweet and kind, I'm just like, no. And that person suddenly because I'm mirroring back, like, I don't say it like this, but I will be like, you're trying to manipulate, or like, you're making this about you. And I think people never kind of realize that side of things, And so I think that can be extra triggering. But there's a lot that we do because we think we're trying to manage other people's emotions or make them feel better. That's actually just manipulative. And for me, that feels disrespectful. It's like, be straight with me or you're disrespecting me. Like, don't try and get me to do something. Like, just be honest with me. So I think that a lot of us, don't realize ways that indirect behavior, like what that feels like energetically, it does not feel good. And I'm trying to think of why I'm so, well, I think it was situations growing up.
I think it also might be related. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's what we were talking about with communication as well, how both of us are just like, just tell it to me straight. And then, and it goes back to like being so intuitive our whole lives and knowing what people are actually thinking, feeling, and then them doing the opposite. So it's
more
triggering.
Than them. Like, it's like someone who will say something to me and I'm like, no, that's not what you're asking. That's not what you're doing. You actually want this. And so you're saying it that way. So that I think this.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're like,
and so it's like, can you just be energetically responsible? And like, it's not even, I mean, maybe it is, but it's like, because I know the real thing, but I just want you to say the real thing so that we can be on the same page. Maybe there's a part of me that also wants that validation. And it's like, now we can move forward like this, instead of like, where are we pulling from? You know?
But so much of that comes from, and isn't this crazy how most people don't actually know why they're saying what they're saying. They don't realize what they're doing. And that comes back to consciousness. That when we're talking about doing the work, like, I'm not perfect, but this is the work I have lived, which is, I don't need someone to reflect to me my sneaky behaviors. Like, I am aware of what I'm doing. And that's where you're fucking awake. Like, are you conscious enough to know that of this is what I'm saying and why I'm saying it, or what I actually want to say, right? Like, I don't need someone to tell me, no, Christina, what you're actually asking is this. And so that's the work to be done. It's what do you really want to ask? What do you really want to say? What are you really feeling, versus doing it this indirect way? Because that's what's crazy, is how many people, like, they don't know what's going on. It's like, you don't even know your own thoughts.
No, and I mean, it's been so crazy to watch you do that for so many people, because, and including myself, right? Because I think it's unfortunately not very common to really bring that level of consciousness like to your own thoughts, because, and maybe it just goes back to like all the noise, right? It's like we're so caught up trying to be like, is this my anxiety or my intuition, that like much less can I understand all the nuances of why my specific ego in this specific body wants to believe this, limiting belief or whatever. And so that's why it is the work. It's work.
It's what it is, it's knowing really clearly this is what my ego is saying.
Yeah.
Like immediately when it like I know exactly where it's coming from, whatever it is. My ego is saying this, my soul is saying this, my mind is saying this. What is my energy body saying? And that's the thing, that's what I'm really reading, you know, because it's two different things to say, like, I can read someone's thoughts. When someone's talking to me and they're saying something, I know what they're thinking, but I also know their energy body, what's really going on. And those are not always the same thing.
Right.
And so what I'm calling out is the energy body piece, because people's thoughts are still this cover. Their thoughts are still a cover. And we're actually getting to, no, what do you mean? Like, what are you feeling? What's really going on? So it's deeper than that.
How do you think people can cultivate that awareness? Because I feel like I have, but I've started to, but I'm curious what you would say to people so that we're not just like, oh, you have to be you know, like, how can you really cultivate this?
Well, I think that it comes in steps. And I think the first step is becoming aware of your thoughts. Yeah. Like, this is the
classic.
Yeah. The brain rewiring piece of just, what are your thoughts? Most people don't think about their thoughts. So first, what are my actual thoughts? And then doing that work of like, where are those coming from? And that's more of the shadow work and getting to know yourself a little bit more. I think that coincides with that daily work of like just sitting with yourself and allowing things to come up and starting to really practice that muscle of learning that was my ego versus that was my soul. And just learning that voice so that it's for me, it's like the difference between if you're saying something or if Catherine's saying something. Right. Like, I just know those Catherine, that was Kaylan, you know? So I just know, and I'm not like thinking about it. And I think that's sometimes when people ask me now, I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's a different voice, you know? But I intentionally took a lot of time just practice tuning into that, and there was a lot of times I was wrong, and that's where I learned even more, because I thought, oh no, my soul is saying this, my intuition is saying this, and then I realized, oh no, that was my ego. And so I had to go through that to really learn the difference. But where you really learn this is when you learn to read energy. I'm telling you, like, and this is why I'm so obsessed with energy work and like Ahai, because all of these other tools just felt like stepping stones to like, let's get to the actual root. And that's where you can see everything, you know? And like, to this day, it's really my awareness of my own energy body that is showing me, I'm like, oh, whoa, that's what's really going on. It's a deeper layer than even my thoughts, my ego versus my intuition. It's like, what is my energy body holding? What am I vibrating with? What am I sending out? And I just think that's such an untapped area. And that's why so many people, they do this, you know, thought work, the subconscious belief work, but they don't do the energetic work. And that's a different component to it. You know, like, we can work on subconscious beliefs through our energy body, but there can be something different in your energy body than your subconscious beliefs. Like, there can be those different things going on. And so when you see that, it's like, oh shit, that's like what's underneath, and what I'm actually, like, the root of where everything else is coming from. Because let's say I have a deep belief in my energy body and I have a subconscious belief here, those two will interact to create whatever my weird behavior is, the way that I'm saying it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like inside out.
Yeah. So it'll interact together. And so the more I started doing energy work on myself and looking at it from like the energy body perspective, just like, what's in here? Psychic surgery is when now I'm seeing everything. Does that make sense? Yeah. So reading energy, which is different than reading thoughts, which is different than that's your ego versus that's your intuition. It's another layer to it. And I think it's all those layers combined where you can really see it quite clearly. Yeah. You know?
And I think that this is one of those things that it's like, this is, you know, whatever you want to call it, this is new earth. It's like, we all need to be able to do this. Yeah. Because this is how we change the frequency of the planet, is this awareness. It's not just like la-di-da, let me go meditate and hope, you know, I just vibrate to love all the time. You know, it's not like fluffy. It's like, let's get in there. Yeah. So I think that that's really interesting.
Well, and what I'll say also to that is, you know, vibrating with love all the time doesn't mean saying yes all the time.
Oh yeah, no.
And I say that because I think about people's reactions to saying, no, no, thank you, I'm not available for that, I don't want to do that. And people have confused that with, I'm not being nice or I'm not being loving. And those are not, it's not the same thing at all. And I do think a lot of that has to do with childhood and how we're brought up, where if the only time we hear a boundary is when we're in trouble, we start to learn that, versus when, you know, a parent it's a very loving container and a loving situation. It's like, no, sweetie, I don't want to do that. And it's not, no one's in trouble. It's just a no. And you learn, oh, you can just say no and you still love me. It wasn't anything was wrong.
Totally.
And a lot of times people only hear a no if something is wrong. And so we got to repattern that.
Yeah.
And I would just say for people with the boundaries, notice where you've created a story that if you're just clear on, this is what I want to do, this is what makes me feel good, this is what doesn't, this is what I'm available for, this is what I'm not, what other stories are you attaching to that? Because it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. And I think also, and this has come up recently, you know, I'm like, I can say, hey, I'm setting a boundary with you, I need space from you, not because I don't love you and not because I don't want to be friends with you, but just like I need space. And that's that. You know, that can exist. So I think a lot of people just haven't experienced that, and they don't want to experience it. But the only way you really learn this stuff in a very embodied way is if you go through the experience.
Absolutely. And I think that it's the same as, like, you know, in a person, we'll just use me as an example, who like has no boundaries with themselves or others. Of course, I'm growing. Is like you would take those things personally, but like. This might be a dumb example, but it's like I used to be that person that would like text back all the time. Like it's like I would always think, like, my whole life, like from whenever we got phones, middle school, high school, all the things, like, why would people just not respond? And then, you know, I'm an adult with ADHD and it's like, okay, well, you're literally never going to hear from me ever again. And so that made me, like, when I started being like, I don't have the capacity to respond to people, whether that be the time, the emotional space, like just the desire, like decision fatigue, whatever. It's like, now I'm never going to judge someone for not responding to me, like for literally any reason. It doesn't matter if I ask them something important. Like, I know that whatever could have happened, I'm not going to take it personally because I myself experience it, you know? And so it's like, if you can think of those types of things, like if someone is listening and it's really hard for you with boundaries, like just think of where you do have boundaries, or like, this might be another dumb example, but like, I guess
they're not though. They're big. And I would say what you just said, we've talked about this. When I stopped replying to people, like texting, the way it changed my life was monumental. Like, these are not dumb examples, and people might overlook that. I'm telling you, if you want to get ahead in your fucking life, do not reply to people immediately. I'm telling you. And people, the number of times I posted about this on the internet, people comment, they're like, what if it's an emergency? What if so? And I'm like, it's not a fucking emergency.
It's never.
The amount of times it's an emergency are 0.0001%, and they will fucking call you. Like, it will be okay. And we were okay when we lived in times when no one had text messaging. But I'm telling you, that was when my business skyrocketed, my body finally started healing, my mental peace, my sleep. I remember I finally slept.
Turn off your notifications, by the way.
Absolutely no notifications. No texting on the computer. I think that is so toxic. Texting on the laptop, so toxic. I don't do emails on my phone. I don't cross. And it's fucking big.
That actually is a big one now that I think about it. I was just going to say another one that came to my mind too, which was like, that being in a long-term relationship helped me with, because I used to take it so personally, like, because my ideas are like, again, I'm an artist, I'm like, oh my god, I just had this epiphany about life that I want to share with someone, I want to share it with my partner, and it's like, if my partner isn't paying attention to me in that exact moment, guess what, it's fine, I get to have this experience for myself, like going back to earlier. Can I just be in this experience myself? And it's like, the amount of times that I do not have the mental capacity to listen to what my partner wants to tell me, even if it's the coolest idea he just had, because guess what, he has 17,000 a day. I'm not gonna listen to all of them. And so it's like, I stopped taking that personally too, when friends or parents or whoever doesn't have the time or space to listen to me in that exact moment. It's like, well, guess what, there's a million moments that I also don't, and it doesn't mean that I don't love them, it doesn't mean that I don't really care about what they think, you know, but sometimes we just need to like look in the mirror a little bit with that stuff. And it's like, okay, I don't take it personally when it's the flip side of the coin, you know?
Well, and I think that just like that awareness of people, we all have stuff going on. We all have, we all got stuff we're holding. And I think when you can just really know that, like, you don't have to take everything so personally. You know?
And it can be open-ended too. It's like, I don't have to know, exactly what Christina is going through. I know she's living life as a human on this planet. That's enough.
I mean, and that's all you need to know. I mean, I think that's the thing about like my entrepreneur friends. I think people have ideas in their head. I'm like, it's a series of like someone texts someone and like I text Kaylee or I text Sam. I don't get a response for 2 months. And then they're like, oh, sorry, missed this 2 months ago. And they send me a message back and I'm like, I miss it. And I respond 2 months later. It's like, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
And everyone's fine with it because everyone's busy.
Yep.
You know? So I don't know. I think that people just take the pressure off.
Yeah.
Take the pressure off and notice where we're putting pressure on other people. So I feel like we unpacked a lot.
Yeah. Oh, God, we unpacked it all.
Yeah, we unpacked all of it. Do you feel complete?
I feel great.
What do you think has been the thing that's helped you the most, like with better boundaries?
I mean, there's a lot in this, but self-love, like really diving into that self-love of like, in all the areas of like, how am I not giving myself, like, where am I keeping myself in this? Yeah. Basically. Because, and it's helped me to think of it just as an energy leak. It's like, literally, I mean, I'm all water anyway. So it's like, if I'm one of those above ground swimming pools with a hole, like there's no way that you're going to be able to patch up all these holes. And so it's like, why would I keep patching up the holes? Like, why would I not just stop letting people poke holes? You know? I think, I mean, I really do think that is a big one for me too. It's just like understanding the concept, which I think is why you help me so much, because you're like, look, I've gone through this, like this is the concept. And if I can like really fully believe in it and like know like, hey, this is better for me, I'm going to find the way to do it. I just have to have that like North Star of like, hey, guess what? You actually are going to feel better. Like I swear. Because it's like in the moment you don't think that you will. You know, you think that being purple all the time is going to be better.
I think that's the big thing that I will say is once I started, I was uncomfortable making changes, thinking it wasn't going to make a big difference. And then when I noticed how much my life changed, I was like, I literally can't go back. Yeah. I literally can't. Yeah. It's like eating healthy.
Yeah. No, it's 100% like that.
And you're like, I literally can never feel like shit again. So you don't know how good you can feel. Yeah. But this is nutrition. This is wellness. You know, like we are taking in energetic nutrients from everything. So it's like if you won't put processed foods in your body, right? If you won't eat crap food, if you filter your water, then it's like, what other energies though toxic energies are you allowing to leak in? And just because it's a toxic energy doesn't mean it's a toxic person. Right. Let's be clear about that. Yeah. Right. Because I think that's the thing where it gets even harder is when you really love someone, you don't want to set a boundary because they're a beautiful person. You love them. And it's not ending a relationship at all. It's just allowing you to feel good so you can continue to show up for them and love each other. Because this is where a lot of resentment gets created. Yeah.
That's a whole other thing. Yeah. And I mean, it's not even about, I mean, it is about the toxic energies you're taking in, but if that's hard to conceptualize, think about it as just too much energy input in general. Yeah. Like you can die from drinking too much water. Yeah. You can.
I know.
You know, so like even if from what you're perceiving, like you're taking in all loving energy, which obviously is never 100% the case, it's like you can still take in too much. Yeah. Like you can't hold it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves.
Yeah. Pipe's gonna burst.
Yeah, pipe is gonna burst. So no more bursting. No. And if you feel like you're gonna burst, like there's your sign. Yeah. There's your sign to reconfigure. Totally. And I think where that's important is it can't always be this dramatic, I'm in the world doing my thing and then I can't deal with anything ever again and I have to go retreat and then I'm back in. It can't be, I'm not saying it is healthy to have times when you like retreat back, but the drama of that back and forth constantly is where clearly we haven't like learned it. We got to be able to like move through the world.
Absolutely.
With the boundaries. So yeah. Well, thank you for opening up because I know a lot of people can relate.
Of course.
And I think that this is a very important conversation right now on the planet with an upcoming election. Oh God.
Okay.
So I hope that everyone got a lot of value out of this. Thanks, Kaylan.
Thank you.